Shalom, shalom. I am Moray Amir Writer, and last week, me and Moray Noriyahu went over a very comprehensive um, dissection of the feast days, right? Of every scripture in Torah that references the feast days, and we were on that live for about 8 hours, and it's a very comprehensive breakdown. But there was so much that we didn't even get a chance to touch on. So I am going to use this time to expand on what it was that we were speaking on, because if that did not convince you, if that did not prove that this is not something that we should do, can do, then I assure you, this lesson is primarily 75 to 80% new stuff. And so, yeah, sure, there's going to be some overlap. We're dealing with the scriptures. But I'm going to allow that lesson to speak for itself. I'm going to try to minimize the overlap. For example, something like Olam, forever. I'm not going to go over that um, here in this particular lesson because we touched on that in the last one. Again, there are going to be some overlap, but I want to keep this lesson as short as possible, but as thorough as possible. So I don't want to retread things that we've already discussed. So if you want to get a understanding or something that I may not have touched on here, then it's probably discussed on there, especially if it's pertaining to something in Torah. Um, and also, please excuse me if you hear me sniffling or clearing my throat. I'm just getting over a cold. Um, but it's important that I get this lesson out. We are now entering into the season in which people would be keeping these feast days. And it's important for them to, if they are seeking, if they're looking for answers, right? If they want to know the truth, despite what they have been doing, if they're curious, I want to allow them enough time to make sure that they can see these lessons, excuse me, and then make a determination on where they stand. Get clarity and make a decision on how they are going to proceed and move forward now that they have this information. Because a lot of them, they may have heard someone speak on these things on Facebook, because this was my first introduction to it 6 7 years ago, but I didn't believe it because the way that the rhetoric was being presented was very abrasive, right? And we have a tendency as Israelites to do that. We get very abrasive, and we want to prove to people through our ego and our vanity that we are right and they're wrong. But I don't want that to be the case here, because this is actually a very serious topic. And anywho, before I start going down a different path, I want to give people the opportunity to see this lesson and make a decision on what they're going to do with their life and their faith and their walk with the Father. All right. So I want to play a game. I want to be transparent. And in the spirit of transparency, I'm going to expose my own hypocrisy via misapplication of the text. So the title of this is Feast Days in the Diaspora, Misapplication of the Text. I want to show you, even myself, because in all of these things, I was doing these feast days. And it wasn't until this year that I dug into this stuff and found out the things that I'd never seen before. Some of them I've read and just didn't even put it together. Some of these things, some of these scriptures never even registered in this capacity. So I want to expose myself because I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to expose my own hypocrisy, my own misapplication of the text, even though I hold the title of Moray. That doesn't mean anything to me. It really, if you know me personally, you know that that doesn't mean much to me at all. But I do have a responsibility as one who people will call Moray. I have this responsibility to, if I have put something out there that was wrong, I have to correct myself. And if I put it out there publicly, then I need to correct it publicly. And that's what I'm doing now. So in the process, and I also have to expose other examples of how I, and maybe you, may be misapplying the text. So let's go ahead and let's look at some. I'm going to tell a story and let's look at some scriptures. All right. So um, on my land, I have 16 blueberry bushes, and in years past, um, whenever I would harvest them, I would drop any of the fruit. I would leave the fruit there, um, and it's because of the scriptures, right? Let's go ahead and pull up some of these scriptures real quick. So here we go, Leviticus 19, 9 through 10. When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall reap your field right up to its edge. Neither shall you gather the gleanings after your harvest. And you shall not strip your vineyard bare, neither should you gather the fallen grapes of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the poor and for the sojourner. I am Yahuwah your Elohim. So when I see a text like this, me being motivated, me being someone who wants to do as the Father desires and requires, I'm going to be obedient. So I would leave the blueberries on the ground for the stranger, for the sojourner. This is what the Father said, right? This year, however, I was harvesting those blueberries, and one of them dropped on the ground. And I left it there as normal, and I went to grab another one from the bush, and I paused, and I was right there like on a knee, and I paused, and I looked at the blueberry, and I looked up, and I started thinking, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? I understand the scripture that I'm trying to apply, but now as I've gotten a little older, I've a little more seasoned in my understanding, and especially now that I'm digging into how we may be misapplying things scripturally, I start thinking, who is my neighbor? Huh? My neighbor is a Gentile, the other one is a Christian. I'm on 20 plus acres. I step out my house, I can't even see a person because it's surrounded by trees. Who is my neighbor? Are they following the same uh, moral code that I am in Torah? Who is my neighbor? If they were to come on my land, what would be my actual reaction if they were coming to get some of my fallen grapes? If anyone coming to my land to try to do that, what's going to be my reaction? It ain't going to be, hey, help yourself. That's not how I'm going to respond. Who is my neighbor? So, you got the stranger, sojourner, these type of things, like the poor. That's not even how this system is set up. So I look at these scriptures, and hold on, there are a few more, but they're similar, right? So I'm not going to go over all of them, but you got Leviticus 23, verse 22, and then you got Deuteronomy 24, verse 19. It's pretty much all saying the same exact thing, right? It shall be for the sojourner, the fatherless, the widow. I am Yahuwah your Elohim, that may bless you in all the work of your hands, right? That is Deuteronomy 24:19. Excuse, I thought it was on the screen. Um, so I'm applying these scriptures in a land where the system is not even set up to properly do this. So what is the purpose of me doing that? And here's where the hypocrisy comes in. So I'm trying, right? Now I'm considering my actions. Does it even make sense? And then I realized how I was being a hypocrite. I realized I was being a hypocrite because while I'm trying to apply all of those things, you want to know what I'm not applying? Let me pull the text back up. This is what I'm not applying. Leviticus 19:23 through 25, which says, when you come into the land and plant any kind of tree for food, then you shall regard its fruit as forbidden. 3 years it shall be forbidden to you. It must not be eaten. In the fourth year, all its fruit shall be holy, an offering of praise to Yahuwah. But in the fifth year, you may eat of its fruit to increase its yield for you. I am Yahuwah your Elohim. See, I'm not applying that one. Why am I not applying that one? Because I'm not in the land, right? It starts off when you come into the land and plant any kind of tree for food. this is the same context as the other ones. See, but I'm not waiting for this one because it's not in the land. And I'm not planting some blueberry bushes. I'm not waiting 5 years to eat from here. Like, it begins to open my mind up to, dang, what else have I been misapplying? Because clearly, I'm not going to do that. But the context of the other ones was representative of the same place in the land. That's where that social structure exists for you to even be able to do those things, right? You go on someone's land, they come on my land, that's trespassing. This social structure isn't set up for this. So let's go ahead and see how else we might be misapplying the text. So what does it mean to keep the feast? All right. So one of the issues that we have, and one of the problems that we run into, is that reading this Bible, our holy text from an English translation, uh, there are a lot of things that we're missing out on. And that is not to say, that you absolutely have to learn Hebrew in order to keep the text or keep the commandments or anything like that. However, there will be times where we will not understand what something is saying in its totality because we're using this English translation. So, as I was doing a thorough examination of Exodus 12, when researching this, I came across 4 times, 4 different times, where the word translated in English as keep, where it meant something different in Hebrew. And a couple of these, and one in particular, which is the focus of why I'm even bringing this up, but a couple of these were vastly different, and one of them was just, it changes the whole context of what it means to keep. So the question is, what are you keeping? When you say, I keep the feast, what are you actually keeping? Do you know? So this is what we're going to do. Let's pull up the scriptures. And so for this verse here, verse 6, Exodus 12, verse 6, and you should keep it in the 14th day of this month when the whole assembly of the congregation shall kill their lambs at twilight. That one is, and I hope I don't mispronounce this, but it's misaret, right? So that's one. Here's another one in Exodus 12:25. Where is it? Exodus 12:25. And interesting, this is the initiation of Pesach. This is important. I want to make sure you understand that this is the initiation of Pesach. And this scripture, even though this ain't the focus of why I'm bringing this up, but since it's here on the screen, it's good to pay attention to. It says, and when you come into the land that Yahuwah will give you, as he promised, you shall keep this service. This is when it's being given to Israel. This is Exodus 12. This is the one that people will read at their Pesach celebrations. And it's telling you where you're supposed to do this, right? But nevertheless, that's not my point in bringing this up for this moment. It says, and when you come into the land, once again, and when you come into the land that Yahuwah will give you, as he promised, you shall keep this service. Exodus 12:25, that word is shamar. That word is shamar. You can look up these words on your own time. Again, I want to try to keep this as short as possible, but I'm just showing you that these are different words being used. Just for quick reference, the scripture or the Strongs for Exodus 12:6 is H4931. The Strongs for Shamar is H8104. Now, let's get back to it. And then we have another one. All the congregation of Israel. This is verse 47. All right, here we go. All the congregation of Israel shall keep it. All right. This one is Asa. Asa. This is Strong's H6213. And now, for the main one, I want to make sure that this is highlighted. This is the only thing that you need to see right here, because this is the one. And this day it shall be a memorial day. Excuse me. And this day shall be for you a memorial day, which we got to get into that as well. And you shall keep it as a feast to Yahuwah throughout your generations, as a statute forever. You shall keep it as a feast. What exactly are we doing? What are we keeping? Do we know why? When you hear maybe the Gentile teachers, or you look up some sort of resources or anything like that, you ever wonder why it says that these are pilgrimage feasts? Of course. See, we can come to the conclusion in other scriptures where, like Exodus 23, where it says 3 times a year your males should present themselves. Now, people will try to spiritualize that as well. But it says 3 times a year, all the men shall present themselves to Yahuwah. But even that, the same word used there is also used here. And again, this is when it's being uh, instituted. This is the inauguration of Pesach or Passover. So what are we getting at here? So the word, and I'm going to pull this up on the screen. Give me 1 second. So the word that's being used for keep in this scenario, or in this particular scripture, Exodus 12:14, it is chagag. Chagag, right? And this word represents a pilgrimage feast. And also it carries with this the idea of movement, going somewhere, a sacred procession, right? So you're going down this path to somewhere. This is where the whole concept of the pilgrimage feast originates from. It's not just because it's in English, it's saying 3 times a year your males should present themselves. No, it is because the Hebrew word is saying that. It's not because of English, it's because the Hebrew word is saying that they have to go somewhere to do something. This is the same word that's being used when Moses goes to Pharaoh. Let's go to it. This is Exodus 5:1. Afterwards, Moses and Aaron went and said to Pharaoh, "Thus says Yahuwah, the Elohim of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness." This is the same word that's being used here. They have to go somewhere to do something. Okay? They have to go somewhere to do something. And ironically, every time that this particular word chagag is used in the Torah, it is only used pertaining to the feast days. It is only used pertaining to the feast days. See, you got Exodus 12:14, Exodus 23:14, where it says 3 times a year you shall keep a feast to me. Leviticus 23:29, Leviticus 23:41. Again, you can, the scriptures are on the screen for reference. You can look these up on your own time to get the context, but all of them are referencing these feast days. The only time that this word is used in Torah where it's not or referencing the feast day is this Exodus 5:1 scripture. So it's this idea that they have to go somewhere. Now remember, this is the inauguration of Passover. Not only did it explicitly say when you come into the land you should keep this service, but the word to keep is being used here. Now, how do we know that this is not specifically referencing just, I'm misunderstanding what it means by feast? Because in the Hebrew, let me pull this back up. I'm sorry. In the Hebrew, if it allows me to go back. Nope, not that way. Exodus 12:14. Okay, so in the Hebrew, it says something interesting. So this word right here is the word that's being used. It's called vechagotin. All right, so that's how it's being written in the text. Maybe I mispronounced it a little bit. I'm still working on my Hebrew. But this is the word chagag that's being used here. Now, how do we know it's not talking about the standard feast? Well, we know that because this is the word for that. Chag. Chag. That's the word for feast, right? Let me pull that one up. I'm saying chag. All right, this is the one for feast. So where we see this particular scripture, I'm not going to go to all of them, but we see this one pulled up in Genesis. Now, you know what? I don't want you to take my word. I'm going to put it on the screen. So this is where we see the word chag being used just as a reference to just a regular, a standard feast. And the child grew. This is Genesis 21:8. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. We also have Genesis 29:22. It talks about where Laban or Laban, he also made a feast. Again, I'm just going to tell you where these are. You can write them down. Go to them, read the context. I'm only giving you points of reference that you can have to do your own studies on this. Genesis 40:20 talks about Pharaoh making a feast on his birthday. Judges 14:10, Samson prepared the feast also. Okay, oops, excuse me. So Judges 14:10, Samson prepared the feast. Job 1:4. I remember when a lot of people came into this walk, they would always quote Job 1:4 as the reason why you shouldn't be keeping, your birthdays and stuff like that. Now, I don't celebrate birthdays, so I'm not condemning anyone for that perspective per se, although I don't think that this was the case for this particular scripture. I still don't subscribe to it. Nevertheless, it says that his sons used to hold a feast. This is the same word chag being used here. This is not chagag for a pilgrimage, to go somewhere, to move in a procession, to have this movement about a person, to do something. So how we really could read using the knowledge that we have now about what this is actually saying, how we really could read this scripture, Exodus 12:14, it would say, this day shall be for you a memorial day, and you shall chagag, keep it as a chag, feast to Yahuwah throughout your generations as a statute forever. You shall chagag, keep it as a chag, feast. That's how this is actually being rendered. It's saying this right here. Chagag, chag. You shall keep a pilgrimage feast. Again, this is when it's being instituted. This is Exodus 12. We're not somewhere else down the line. Even though it's still the book, if it was, we should take the book for what it is and not try to circumvent where this is now placed in order to make us feel good about what we're doing. We have to accept the word for what the word is, and this is the word. What is a memorial? Sometimes we will come across the idea, well, I know I can't keep it. I am keeping a memorial. Um, First, we have to understand this, that Pesach that occurred in Egypt, that was Pesach. Everything else that we're doing is a memorial, right? So in the text where these people are keeping Pesach, they are actually memorializing Pesach. So one has to ask themselves if what they are doing matches the memorial that was actually laid out in the text. Remember, Exodus 12 in Egypt was Pesach. The ones that are performed after that throughout generations, these are the memorial. And the Father tells us how we are to memorialize it, right? We are to memorialize it according to the rites and the statutes that He has laid out. So if your memorial does not look like that, then are you actually memorializing it? Or are you bastardizing it? This is not to antagonize you. I said the same things. I already exposed my hypocrisy earlier. Look, it is what it is, fam. It is what it is. I've already exposed myself that I could misapply the text. And so I was one who, although I didn't have the perspective I have now, I did think, well, yeah, I can't keep it in its totality, but I'm going to do the best that I can. I'm going to do something because something is better than nothing. That is awesome when we're talking about us, when we're talking about human effort. That's not the standard of the Father. I'm going to do something. No, you're going to do what he told you to do, or you're being disobedient. So I don't want you to just take that. I want to let me expound on this so that you can get a better understanding of what I'm referring to. All right. So we're going to go to Exodus 13, 3 through 10. I hope that I can harmonize this idea for you a little bit more. Remember, there is actually one Passover, the initial one, Egypt. They're slaves. They're in bondage. The Father brings them out of Egypt, right? And says, do this, 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 this. Death angel will pass over you, so forth and so. We know the story. We knew it as Christians. We know the story. And then subsequently, everything after that is a memorial. All right? One Pesach, everything after that is the memorial. This is the service that they are keeping. They are guarding the service, right? So that's for context, but hopefully I can make it a little clearer for you. So when we go to Exodus 13, give me a second. All right. So when we go to Exodus 13, 3 through 10, it says, then Moses said to the people, remember this day in which you came out from Egypt, out of the house of slavery, for by a strong hand Yahuwah brought you out from this place. No leavened bread shall be eaten. Now, one other sidebar that I want to explain. It may or may not be relevant, but I want to give you the perspective that your studies have to really be diligent. So when they say in the first month of this year, whatever, 10th month, like these things actually mean something. They mean something. And if we just breeze over it, we're going to miss something. Exodus 13 actually could be inserted into Exodus 12. I personally don't think that this should be a separate chapter, at least the first half of it. It could be in chapter 12. We see that in Exodus 12, towards the end, they're being removed from Egypt. They are leaving out. But however, in Exodus 13, it says, remember this day which you came out from Egypt, out of the house of slavery. For by a strong hand Yahuwah brought you out from this place. That's a tense marker. All right. No leavened bread shall be eaten. Verse 4, it says, today in the month of Abib, you are going out. Not you came out, not you went out, you left from. It says today in the month of Abib, you are going out. So these are tense markers. Even in English, this could be understood. So this portion here can actually be inserted into Exodus 12. I want y'all to, oops, I'm sorry, hit the wrong button. I want you all to understand that because again, context, we're establishing what was being said when this was initially given. Okay, so they are still in Egypt when this portion of Exodus 13 is being said. And it goes on to say, verse 5, I'm going to highlight this one. And when Yahuwah brings you into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, which he swore to your fathers to give to you, a land flowing with milk and honey, you shall keep this service in this month. So, again, understanding that this is really a part of Exodus 12, even if worst case scenario, let's say that that's not accurate. This is still like right afterwards. But from the tense markers, remember this day in which you came out from Egypt. Today in the month of Abib, you are going out. Like there's enough to understand that this order, this sequence, is a continuation of what's being said in the narrative of Exodus 12. So it says you should keep this service in this month. What service? 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the seventh day there shall be a feast to Yahuwah. Unleavened bread shall be eaten for 7 days. No leavened bread shall be seen with you, and no leaven shall be seen with you in all your territory. You should tell your son on that day, it is because of what Yahuwah did for me when I came out of Egypt. And this shall be to you as a sign on your hand and a memorial between your eyes. Well, what? And it. What is it? What is it? It is the things that preceded this. The 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the seventh day there should be a feast to Yahuwah. Unleavened bread should be eaten for 7 days. It is that. That is it, right? So it says, and it should be a sign on your hand as a memorial between your eyes that Yahuwah, that the law of Yahuwah, may be in your mouth. Therefore, let me go to this real quick. So when it references it, it's talking about what he already said. So there's a couple of Hebrew words that are commonly used to try to understand what memorial means. Like zakar means to call to mind, right? But what something like zakar means is, let me not touch this stove because I remember what happened last time. That is literally calling to mind. It's not an action. It is in your mind. It is not even in the physical realm. It is in your thoughts, in your meditations, right? This is what it means to call to mind, right? There's another word, zakar, something like that. But then this one that's being used for memorial in these contexts is zikaron, right? It is something done. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. So again, zikaron is a bit different in zakar, as zakar is for remembrance, comes to mind. You think about it, you thought of it, something that has happened, and it then registers in your consciousness. Well, this one is more related to an action or something physical, something that has made into the physical realm. So as I already said, if you keep unleavened bread for 7 days, and then on the seventh day you hold the feast of Yahuwah, you eat no unleavened bread. That is the memorial. That is the memorial, right? But there's also with this one, you get something like, where is it at? Well, when Yah told Moses in Exodus 17:14, when he told Moses to write this as a memorial in a book, right? So that's a writing, can also be a zikaron, right? It's now registered into the material world, right? Physical objects like the stones in the shoulders of the ephod in Exodus 28:12. All right, I'm telling you where to go. I'm not putting it on the screen. Um, I'm taking a little long, so I'm trying to condense this. But Exodus 28:12, the stones in the shoulder of the ephod, or even the 12 stones that was set up when they crossed the Jordan in Joshua 4, chapter 4. I think it's 1 through 7. Those are physical objects. Those 12 stones represent a memorial for when they crossed over the Jordan. So why don't we see people writing for memorial? If we're saying that our feast days are simply a memorial, why don't we see people writing something as a memorial? Why don't we see a physical object? Why don't you buy a lamb, right? Why don't you buy a lamb? Set it up on your table and say, this is a memorial for when Yahuwah brought us out of the land of Egypt. Why don't we do that? Why does it have to be that we are adding to and taking away from the prescription that was given for what was actually the memorial? Why are we conflating these contexts? It's because we are always prone to do what is right in our own eyes. That has been us. I'm guilty of it. Again, it may not be a willful, in this case, a willful disobedience, or willful disregard, like making his word a light thing, where you think that you can go to the store and grab you some lamb, and you don't know how this lamb was taken care of. You don't know if this lamb had its neck broken, legs broken. You don't know if it's 1 year old. You don't know if they cut up that same lamb with a knife that they use. They just got done slaughtering a pig, and they took that same knife and then they sliced up your lamb. And this is your Pesach, right? This is what you're calling the Pesach lamb, and you don't even know where the origins. You don't even know if this lamb is clean. You don't know what cross contamination has happened, and we think that this is pleasing, and we think that is pleasing. Uh, we have so much zeal and so little knowledge, and I'm speaking as a collective, not as you as an individual watching this, not even as me. I'm speaking as a collective. We have so much zeal and so little knowledge. We don't even understand what we're zealful for. All right? We gotta do better than that. So why don't we see other things being used as these memorials? This is because we're trying to actually keep it. We can say, we can make whatever excuses we want. The reality is that we are trying to keep it. Uh, if you don't do it, or if someone doesn't do it, do you call it sin? Do you look at it as sin if someone else doesn't do it? If you don't eat it at sunset, right? Is it sin? If you have find leaven in your house, or you know someone who ended up having leaven in their house during the period of unleavened bread, do you repent? Like, what is your posture when it doesn't go the way you want it to go? Do you feel guilty? Do you feel like you're doing something wrong? Do you feel you need to repent if you make a mistake and you don't do it the way it's supposed to? If this is indeed the case, then again, you're just lying to yourself. You're actually trying to keep it. But either way, even if you're trying to keep it as a memorial, everything after that in the text is a memorial. So if your memorial does not line up with how it's being done in the text, it's actually not a memorial, especially to Yahuwah. Especially to Yahuwah. Since we're already here, might as well start talking about it. Zeal without knowledge. What is zeal without knowledge? Have you ever heard of North Sentinel Island? It is an island somewhere within like the Indian Ocean, somewhere near India, right? I don't remember exactly where it's at. I believe it's in the Indian Ocean, but the point of it is that it is an uncontacted tribe of people, the Sentinelese people. And there was a Christian missionary. I don't remember his name. His name is not important. But this Christian missionary had believed that it was his calling through God. This is what he said. This is his words, not mine. That he was being called by God to bring the gospel of Christ to these people. These people are, again, they're indigenous. They don't have contact with the outside world. Um, their immunity isn't even built up to withstand the type of diseases that a missionary like that could potentially bring over there. Um, Nevertheless, his zeal told him that he was called to do this. And so he went out there by himself. He went out there to bring the God. He practiced. He practiced how he was going to bring the gospel to the Sentinelese people. And he went out there and he made contact with them. And he was not welcome. He was not welcome. He left and came back. I don't remember if it's the next day he came back or 2 days later, whatever the case may be. Within a few days, if not the next day, he went back, made contact again, go into the island with his Bible, end up dead. They killed him. Zeal without knowledge. Zeal without knowledge. Now, that is on the extreme side of the spectrum. But a lot of times in this walk, we'll beat up some people with some scriptures, and then come to find out we're wrong about those scriptures, the context anyway, right? So we misinterpret them, but we beating people upside the head with them. Ain't even talking about what we're saying they're talking about is. It's not even talking about that. But our zeal, we're so zealous, and we haven't put in the work. We haven't put in the studies. Honestly, we're still trusting people to do the work for us. I know we left Christianity where like the pastor take a scripture, maybe two if you're lucky, do a sermon on it, and people walk away feeling good. Yeah. And you come here like Christians don't study. And then you come here and then your moray, your teacher, some still hold the title of pastor in this walk. Any one of these titles, right? You still yield all of your knowledge to whatever they're telling you. And you haven't tested it. We're still doing the same thing. So we're still operating with the zeal without knowledge. We're not investigating like we should be. We have a luxury that the people when this book was written did not have. See, the priest was the teachers of the masses, and then the head of the house would take on things from there. Uh, but we actually have access to it, and we're not even taking advantage of the access that we have. Nevertheless, Romans 10 verses 2 through 3. Romans 10 verses 2 through 3. Let me pull that up. It says, "For I bear them witness that they have a zeal for Elohim, but not according to knowledge. For being ignorant of the righteousness of Elohim and seeking to establish their own, they do not submit to Elohim's righteousness." Seeking to establish their own. Circumventing the Father's instructions for their own. I'm sorry, it didn't say that. And seeking to establish their own. Wanting to make their name oh no, sorry, don't say that. You get the picture. Wanting to have these grand ceremonies. Wanting to feel good about who we are as Israelites. Wanting to wave a banner saying that we are doing something that you're not doing. We're righteous, you're not. Verse 3, "For being ignorant of the righteousness of Elohim and seeking to establish their own, they did not submit to Elohim's righteousness." Let's pull this back up. Now, if we go down or go over to Proverbs 19:2, depending on your version, you might get a different translation of this. This one says, "Desire without knowledge is not good, and whoever makes haste with his feet misses his way." Some say zeal, some say a soul, but some say zeal without knowledge is not good. Either way, whoever makes haste with his feet misses his way. See, a lot of us come into this walk and we're excited and we want to do right. And that is commendable. I remember I came into this walk my first year of being in this walk, I built a sukkah to the best of my ability to know how. Did it have palm leaves? No, it didn't. I used some wood from Home Depot, and I used some branches, and I built the sukkah. That was my first year, right? I'm trying, and it makes you feel good to say that I'm trying my best to keep the laws of the Most High Yah. But the component that I was missing is that he wants things a certain way. He don't give instructions to build the ark. And if you build that ark a different way, guess what? We don't exist. Because Noah didn't want to listen. He take those instructions and do something different. We don't even exist. He just start new. If he decides he could have been like, man, no, these humans something else, man. these Nephilim and put in some work on their minds and hearts, and they're just not going to listen. No, he could have just been like, I'm not dealing with humanity anymore. Or they're told to build the Ark of the Covenant. He'll give instructions for someone to do something just for them to disregard it. Like this is supposed to mean something. If he said it is supposed to mean something, why and how are we diminishing what he's saying for the feast days? Do we want this emotional connection that much that we're willing to disregard what he's saying and do what we want and then classify it as, oh, we're doing our best? What if those who were commanded to build the ark just did their best, but they didn't follow instructions? Like, do your best while following the instructions. Do your best in this time. Do your best to make sure you got a lamb 1 year without blemish. Do your best to do that. Going to Kroger, Aldi's, Walmart, uh, what other groceries, whatever local grocery stores you have, um, and buying your lamb. I already talked about this earlier. Like, that's not doing your best because you're not doing what you were told to do. And that's okay because you can't do what we were told to do. And that's what we have to accept, that we can't do that. Or you could be a hypocrite, like I was being a hypocrite, and only apply certain scriptures when it came to my land, but not apply these other ones because technically we're not in the land, so I don't need to follow that. We can do all of these mental gymnastics, to prove ourselves to the Father. But how is he viewing that? Let's look at 1 Chronicles 13, 9 through 11. Yeah, it's on the screen. All right, and it says, when they came to the threshing floor of Chidon, Uzzah put out his hand to take hold of the ark, for the oxen stumbled. And the anger of Yahuwah was kindled against Uzzah. And he struck him down because he put out his hand to the ark. And he died there before Elohim. And David was angry because Yahuwah had broken out against Uzzah. And that place is called Perez Uzzah to this day. Listen, I want you to understand this. Like, this ain't even ignorance, right? This ain't even a lack of knowledge. I don't even necessarily want to say this was Zeal. It could have been Zeal, but I don't think so. I don't even think this was Zeal. What I see happening according to this text, I'm going to try not to put too much presuppositions on it, but he's just trying to do what he felt was right. He's trying to do what he felt was right. The ark is about to fall, or in his mind, the ark is about to fall. The ox stumbled. Let me go out, take hold of this ark. I don't want the ark to hit the ground, but that's not his job. That's not his job. You're not supposed to touch it. He was not commanded to touch it. Nor was Saul commanded to give sacrifice. And he did that. He lost the kingdom. Like, we do things out of order, whether it be from fear or excitement. We do things out of order and we try to justify it. Those seasons of doing that has to stop. It has to stop. We got to tighten up, fam. We got to tighten up. So this is something that we have to discuss. We have to discuss this because the misapplication of this in all your dwellings, the misapplication of this is another thing that promotes the idea or the narrative that we could just do anything, anywhere, and that's okay. That's fine because, the text says in all your dwellings. But as with scriptures, also with anything in life, if you take something out of its original context or its stated reason of being said, then you're going to misapply it. You're going to misunderstand it. That's the whole reason why there's such a debate about Paul and what he's saying, is because people taking what he's saying out of context, right? Like, we should understand this, but it's just hard to see when we put up these blocks because it's something that we want to do. When you take it out of its context, you're going to misapply it, you're going to misunderstand it. If you send a text message to a friend and someone else reads that message and they can take it out of context because they don't know why it's being said, they don't know the previous conversations, they're not privy to the context. But we continue to operate in this fashion. I was talking to one of my good brothers, Moray Yahuel, and we were talking about this topic in your dwellings, in all your dwellings. And he pointed out a couple contexts to some scriptures that just broadens the idea of exactly what I'm saying. Like, context actually matters. So the word being used in a lot of these is moshab, or everyone that I'm going to bring out anyway is moshab. And some translations may say in all your dwellings, some may say in your habitations or where they live, but the same word is being used here, which is established in the context is how this word is being used. I hope I'm not talking too fast. I hope that's clear. This is YouTube, so you can rewind it back. Let's look at some of these scriptures that my brother pointed out to me. Genesis 10:30. The territory in which they live extended from Mesha in the directions of Sephar to the hill country of the east. Right? He pointed out, like, this is the homes and communities of the sons of Shem. And I'm like, that's nice. You're right. He pointed out Exodus 10:23. Let me pull that up real quick. Hold on. All right, here we go. They did not see one another, nor did anyone arise from his place for 3 days. But all the people of Israel had light where they lived, in all their dwellings. The context of all their dwellings here, he pointed out, is the communities while in Goshen. And I'm like, that is very true. This is great for establishing how this word is often used. Now, here is one that I have pointed out in Leviticus 23:17, right? So now let's take all that we just said and now let's apply it to the topic of the feast days. Leviticus 23:17 says, you shall bring from your dwelling places 2 loaves of bread to be waved, made of 2/10 of an ephah. They shall be of fine flour, and they shall be baked with leaven as first fruits to Yahuwah. All right. So, where do you think this has to take place if it says, you shall bring from your dwelling places? Do you think this is America? You think this is Europe? Haiti, Jamaica, South America, Africa? Because the very next thing it says, 2 loaves of bread to be waved. Who's supposed to wave it? Made of 2/10 of an ephah. They should be a fine flour. They should be baked with leaven as first fruits to Yahuwah. See, there's a context to here. This is specifically talking about in your land. How do we know? How can we understand that this is the context? Because where else can you remove from your dwellings 2 loaves of bread to be waved? Now, I said, who's supposed to wave it? The priests are supposed to wave it. So, in order to have the priest wave this, you have to be somewhere where Israel is an autonomous people. So whether it's in the land or whether later on in Jerusalem, either way, this is referring to being in the land of Israel, right? Before I go to the next point, I want to establish this context a little bit more because we can be very hypercritical when someone's showing us something that we don't want to agree with. So that verse 17, you should bring from your dwelling places 2 loaves of bread to be waved, made of 2/10 of an ephah. They should be a fine flour, and they shall be baked with leaven as first fruits to Yahuwah. And then it says, and you shall present with the bread 7 lambs, a year old without blemish, and 1 bull from the herd, and 2 rams. They shall be a burnt offering to Yahuwah with their grain offering and their drink offerings, a food offering with a pleasing aroma to Yahuwah. And you shall offer 1 male goat for a sin offering. And two, like, come on, do I even have to continue to read this? We clearly know that this is talking about the land. So it says, from all your dwelling places. It's not talking about your dwelling places in Chicago. It's not talking about your dwelling places in Detroit, New Orleans, wherever you are. it is talking about the land in this context. The context changes depending on what's being spoken of, but it's not talking about anywhere, anytime. It literally establishes the context within the sequence of events occurring before and after. This is where you find out what's being done. So, back to that, if you look at verse 20, verse 20, and the priest shall wave them. The priest shall. So again, you have to have a functioning priesthood. That's part of the context. You have to have a tabernacle because these are sacrifices. So you need at least those two things. You need at least those two things, right? Functioning priesthood and a tabernacle. Eventually, again, once they get to the land, they're still in the tabernacle for a good portion, and then once uh, the temple is established in Jerusalem, then that's where it's done. Either way, these dwellings is not talking about dwellings anywhere across the world. It is specific to the context being rendered. Now, speaking of context, I want to present something. So this is something I want to talk about that I personally call the first fruits conundrum. Because when we are in any scenario, I've yet to see us as Israelites keep first fruits, right? Well, that's one of the Moedim. That's one of the appointed times. We do Pesach, unleavened bread. We do Shavuot. We do Sukkot. And, ironically, these are the three that it specifically says are to be done in the land, all right? You must present yourselves to the Father, right? So, ironically, those are the ones we do. Now, we also, some do Yom Kippur, but I have yet to see anyone do first fruits. I've yet to see anyone do first fruits. And it's interesting because this is important. The implications of this is far reaching. And this actually sort of blew my mind when I understood this. And it took me a long time to understand this. And starting at verse 9, right? This is Leviticus 23, starting at verse 9. Let me pull up the text on the screen. All right, and it says, and Yahuwah spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land. Well, before I continue, I want to highlight that again. It says, when you come into the land. Remember when I was talking about the institution of Pesach, right? What did it say? When you come into the land. When we was talking about unleavened bread, Exodus 13, what does it say? When you come into the land that I will bring you, or that I swear to give your fathers, the land of the Canaanites, the Hivites, in the land. So in the beginning, it's saying in the land. Now we come here to Leviticus 23. Somebody want to know about the feast days? One of the first places we'll go is Leviticus 23. Well, the context of Leviticus 23, when it comes to the feast days, the Moedim, not Shabbat, that's a whole topic in and of itself. I'm going to do a lesson on that because it naturally brings the question, do we keep the Shabbat now? Well, yes, you keep the Shabbat. The Shabbat is completely different. One thing we must understand is that every feast day is a Moedim, but every Moedim is not a feast day. Even when it's given here in Leviticus 23, there's never a land contingency on the Shabbat. But I don't want to spend too much time on it because that's going to be its own lesson. I'm going to thoroughly go into the Shabbat. But just for right now, yes, I recently researched this again because I had that question after coming to the knowledge of this. So want to put your spirits at ease that yes, you can keep the Shabbat. But back to the first fruits conundrum on Leviticus 23. It says, and Yahuwah spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the people of Israel when you come into the land that I give you, and reap its harvest. Well, what is its? Remember, these words mean something. Even in English, these little, these identifiers, these markers, and reap its harvest. What is it? The land. the land that he's going to give you. When you reap from the land that he's going to give you. All right. So it says, and reap its harvest, you shall bring the sheaf of first fruits of your harvest to the priest. Okay. So establishing location. What do we have so far in establishing this location? We have coming to the land, you reap its harvest. That means the land. And then you have to bring the sheaf of first fruits to the priest. That's three things right there. That's three things right there that can show you that this is specifically talking about a setup where you have a functioning priesthood and a tabernacle or temple. Okay? And the land. How do we know that? Because it said it. It said it. Give me a second. Let me pull back up the scriptures again. I'm going to continue this. And it says, verse 11, and he shall wave the sheaf before Yahuwah so that you may be accepted. On the day after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. And on the day when you wave the sheaf, you shall offer a male lamb, 1 year old without blemish, as a burnt offering to Yahuwah. And the grain offering with it shall be 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, a food offering to Yahuwah with a pleasing aroma, and the drink offering with it shall be of wine, 1/4 of a hin. And you shall eat neither, here we go, this is important, and you shall eat neither bread nor grain, parched or fresh, until this same day, until you have brought the offering of your Elohim. It is a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. Again, even though we're moving past the all your dwellings component of this, this clearly is establishing that if it's a statute forever through all your generations in all your dwellings, that a forever is the word olam. That's the word being used there. Forever is conditional or under certain circumstances for a undetermined amount of time. I'm not going to go into that here because we went over that into the last lesson. And so I want to keep it focused on the new information that I'm presenting to you all. But again, just a simple reading of this will show that contextually, if it's a statute forever throughout all your generations and all your dwellings, well, dwellings have to be contextual because everything we see here, burnt offerings, giving something to a priest, is going to be an off, like that has to be with the functioning priesthood and or tabernacle in the land because he already gave the determination of where this is supposed to occur. Um, so you already have that, and therefore forever, if you're scattered and dispersed, you don't have access to this. That clearly shows that forever in this context is conditional. If these conditions are met, you're in the land, you got this priesthood, you got this tabernacle / temple, then you can do these things. If not, then you can't. But again, if you want more understanding on forever, check out the video that I did with Moray Noriyahu, and we go into that on there. But this is something that I want to focus on right now. So that brings us to my point in this is the first fruits conundrum. So we come across that important phrase, to be accepted. What does it mean to be accepted? What is this in reference to? The context continues to give a little bit more. Let me bring the scriptures back up on the screen. All right, so this again, this is pivotal. Pivotal if you are a keeper of the feast, right? Here's why. The backdrop, so the Feast of Unleavened Bread is occurring. During this time, you are to present a specific offering. That's where we're at right now, the first fruits offering, right? So you are to present this specific offering, the sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest, and he will wave it. Now, if we jump to verse 14, it says, and you shall eat neither. So, in plain English, do not eat bread. All right, so I'm gonna read it the way it's rendered. And you shall eat neither bread nor grain, parched or fresh, until this same day, until you have brought the offering of your Elohim. It is a statute forever throughout your generation and all your dwellings. Now, if you believe that you are a keeper of the feast and that you being obedient to the Father, this will back you into the wall. This will put you in a corner. Because what is it saying? It is saying that you cannot eat bread, right? So remember, you have been performing unleavened bread. You have been performing this according to the instructions that the Father gave. You have been 7 days, or in the process of 7 days, eating no unleavened bread. While you're in the process of this, because any sequence of unleavened bread, you're going to come across a weekly Sabbath, because it's 7 days. So if your unleavened bread starts on the Wednesday, you're going to come across a weekly Shabbat. There's just no way around it. So what this is telling you is that in order to be accepted meaning that you are now eligible to go back to eating bread when unleavened bread is over. This is what it's saying. You shall neither eat. Oh, so let me put the scriptures back up on the screen. You shall neither eat bread nor grain, parched or fresh, until this same day, until you have brought the offering of your Elohim. So if you, in your quote unquote keeping of the feast, and I'm not trying to be condescending, but I have to say things like that because of how people are identifying what they're doing. They believe that they're keeping the feast, so I don't. And so I have to call it that or say something like quote unquote. But as a keeper of the feast, if you are doing unleavened bread and after 7 days, you like, man, I'm about to eat some pizza. Man, I'm about to eat a burger. Or whatever type of leaven that you consume, you are now being disobedient. You are out of order. This places you in a serious box. Put your back up against the wall. You really have to consider what you are actually doing in the diaspora, trying to keep these things, thinking that you're keeping these things. Because now, every time you are technically in sin. I know we don't want to hear that. But I'm letting the text say it, right? And you shall eat neither bread nor grain, parched or fresh, until you do this offering. Until you do this offering. Let me pull it back up. Don't look at me. Look at the scriptures. And you shall eat neither bread nor grain, parched or fresh, until this day, until you have brought the offering of Yahuwah your Elohim. It is a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. So, if you're not doing this, then you would be in disobedience all the way to the following year. Like you're living in a state of disobedience. And the reality is, you can't do this. Why? Because you are not in the land. You don't have a functioning priesthood. There is no temple or tabernacle. So either if you're doing this and keeping the feast, then you're in disobedience, and you're just wasting your time. The other way to look at it, you're just wasting your time, or you're doing a gathering of your own volition to appease yourself because you don't have the ability to do or perform the requirements. Now, ask yourself this. Ask yourself this. Why would it all of a sudden be okay to deviate from what he says? Right? So, this is what I mean. So you're performing what you're calling Pesach unleavened bread, right? And that's fine. What you are doing is acceptable. That's not me speaking. I'm throwing out the logic and the rationale behind that. So you're performing those, and what you're doing is acceptable, despite already deviating from what he instructed. But let's just say it is acceptable. Why would it all of a sudden be acceptable to skip an entire moed? One that actually gives you the authority and the permission to return back to eating leaven. So you got Pesach, unleavened bread, you're doing that, you're skipping this. Is it okay to just skip this moed? Why don't we perform this moed? You know why. You know why. And the same reason that you know of why we can't perform this moed here in this land is the same reason you can't do any of the other ones. It is the same reason. But we convinced ourselves because we want to celebrate. We are a celebratory people and we want to celebrate. So we convinced ourselves that it's okay. But there's no way to get around this one. We just skip it like we've been doing. I skipped it too. I'm embarrassed by that fact now. So it's not a place of judgment that I'm coming from. It's not a place of judgment. But again, this is about me righting my wrongs. And so I have to show you, if you are partaking in this, and if this is your type of logic, that you are in error. Because you're skipping the very thing that makes it permissible for you to even go back to eating leavened bread. I'm going to pull it back up because I want to go through this one more time because you need to see it again. And you shall eat neither bread nor grain, parched or fresh, until the same day, until you have brought the offering of your Elohim. Going back up here, it says in verse 11, you shall wave the sheep before Yahuwah so that you may be accepted. Keeper of the feast, are you accepted? Are you accepted? Doing what is right in your own eyes. Here, we're going to go to Deuteronomy 12 and going to see what the text is saying, because the text is going to speak for itself. And I'm just going to point out our hypocrisy, including my own, that I had up until this year, and that many of you, unbeknownst to you, are operating in. Okay? Deuteronomy 12, it says, where should I start? I'll start at verse 1. These are the statutes and rules that you shall be careful to do, where? In the land that Yahuwah, the Elohim of your father, has given you to possess. Now, I'm not going to read all of these scriptures. Read chapter 12 on your own time, which you should verify everything that I'm saying anyway on your own. But there's a lot here, and it begins to sort of repeat itself after a while. So I'm not going to read everything, but read entire chapter 12. Make sense of it. All right. This is your, let me look at it. This is your walk with the Father, not mine. Right. I'm correcting myself and I am recalibrating accordingly. Right. So I'm no longer doing these things, but that's me. Read chapter 12. I'm not reading all of chapter 12 because I want to get to so many more things before I lose your attention in what I'm trying to convey to you. So let's see. Verse 8. Let's go down to verse 8. It says, you shall not do according to all that we are doing here today, everyone doing what is right in his own eyes. For you have not as yet come to the rest and to the inheritance that Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you. This is talking about the land. But when you go over the Jordan and live in the land that Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you to inherit, and when he gives you rest from all your enemies around so that you live in safety, then to the place that Yahuwah your Elohim will choose, we know that to be Jerusalem, to make his name dwell there, there you shall bring all that I command you. There we go. Your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, your tithes. Your tithes. Why do we not tithe? Why do we not tithe? Some would say because we don't have a priesthood. Some would say that, rightfully so. Some would say because we don't have a temple, rightfully so. Some would say because we're not in the land, rightfully so. Amazing, amazing. Three things: we don't have a priesthood, we don't have a temple or tabernacle, and we're not in the land. These three things could be said across various groups of the diaspora, and guess what? They are actually right. So, if we apply that same correct logic to the logic of the feast, given everything that we've read up to this point, why are we keeping the feast? We don't have a priesthood. We don't have a tabernacle or temple. We're not in the land. So we're not going to tithe because of those reasons. But we're going to do this other thing that the Father explicitly said should be done like this and in this location. And we think that's okay. Do you see the hypocrisy? How we have been picking and choosing what we want to do. We have been picking and choosing, and that's the same thing that we would criticize any other religious group for doing. Like, you just picking and choosing. Or as the text would say, you're just adding and taking away from, which it tells you not to do. So how long will we continue to pick and choose to do right by the Father? How long will we walk in our hypocrisy, knowing that we are now hypocrites? I'm not making this up. This is not my rhetoric. This is the text. I'm reading the text and then giving a little feedback on what we're reading. It says, going back to verse 11, it says, then to the place that Yahuwah your Elohim will choose to make his name dwell there, there you shall bring all that I command you. Your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, your tithes, and the contribution you present, and all your finest vow offerings that you vow to Yahuwah. And you shall rejoice before Yahuwah your Elohim, you and your sons and your daughters, your male servants, your female servants, and the Levite that is within your towns. Clearly the context is established, but since he has no portion or inheritance with you, take care that you do not offer your burnt offerings at any place that you see. But at the place that Yahuwah will choose in one of your tribes, there you shall offer your burnt offerings, and there you shall do all that I am commanding you. All that he is commanding you. Okay? So, how long will we do what is right in our own eyes? Again, how long will we do what is right in our own eyes? Let the text speak for itself. Sure, you may love your leaders. You may love your teachers. I'm never telling you to be rebellious, but I am encouraging you to do what the text says. Do what the text says. Okay? Put things back in its proper context and get back in the proper order. We cannot say that the Father does things through decency and order and then do stuff out of order. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing. We need to respect Jerusalem. This is what I'm starting to see things are coming down to, is that we don't understand nor respect Jerusalem the way we should, right? It's called the Holy Land for a reason. Uh, and we do not give it the respect that it should have. So let's look at a few scriptures to reestablish that, and then we're going to get into prophecy. We're almost done with this lesson. Yep, we need to put some respect on Jerusalem. We don't see it the way that he sees it. Clearly, Jerusalem is important because this is the same place where Naaman took Saul from. Naaman went over there, got healed, took some soul back with him so that he could worship the Father. He understood the connection between the land and the deity. And we seem to lack that understanding, so we can think that we're keeping holy days in unholy land. That don't make sense. Think about that. We think that we're keeping holy days in unholy land. Naaman knew that this Elohim is connected to this land. Let me take this soil so that I can go back to my hometown and that I can worship him as if I'm in Jerusalem because I have some of Jerusalem with me. You see that? So we are missing that. We're missing that. Again, we think that we can keep holy days in unholy land. Let's pull up the text. Let's see what the Father says about Jerusalem. Now, there are so many texts that talk about Jerusalem that I I'm not gonna put all of them up there. And matter of fact, once I start reading these, I'm kind of gonna go rapid fire, because it's just too many examples. I just want you to have a point of reference per this lesson, so that within the lesson I'm talking about it, you have something to reference. But there's just too much about Jerusalem within the text. But before I get to that, I talked about Naaman. This is the other thing I want to mention. This is the place that the Father chose forever. If you think about this for a second, Melchizedek, he is called the King of Righteousness. Matter of fact, um, Melech, King, Zedek, Righteousness. Melchizedek, whatever flavor of your pronunciation of it, he is the King of Righteousness. That's what his name means. Where was he king of? He was the king of Salem. Now, whatever it's worth, let me pull my camera back up. Whatever it's worth, scholars agree that Salem is what we now would know of to be Jerusalem as far as the text. I'm not getting into the location of Jerusalem and all. I'm just saying that the place that was referenced as Salem in the text is the same place that's referenced as Jerusalem in the text. I'm not going across where it's actually the holy. I'm not doing it. Now, with that said, if he chose Salem, or this representative from Salem was the king of righteousness that our father Abraham tied to, who is referenced in connection, right, to Mashiach, right? They draw this parallel, Melchizedek having no beginning, no end, king of Salem. Look, the Father has always had an affinity for Jerusalem. He's always had an affinity for Jerusalem. So for us to um, disregard Jerusalem and do things our own way anywhere and anyhow we want to, even though it's only meant to be done in the place that he chose, we're doing our relationship, or this understanding of our relationship with the Father, a disservice, right? We're not connecting in totality with the mind of the Creator. Okay? So even when this thing is reset, like we got new heaven, new earth. Do you know what else we getting? New heaven, new earth. Do you know what Revelation says that we gonna get from the sky? New Jerusalem. New Jerusalem. We can't ignore it. Jerusalem is the place. So real quick, rapid fire. I'm going to read some of these scriptures. But each one will lead to really the meat of what I'm trying to convey. All right, so starting at the first one. Psalms 135, 19 through 21. O house of Israel, bless Yahuwah. O house of Aaron, bless Yahuwah. O house of Levi, bless Yahuwah. You who fear Yahuwah, bless Yahuwah. Blessed be Yahuwah from Zion. He who dwells in Jerusalem, praise Yahuwah. Isaiah 52, 1. Awake, awake, put your strength, O Zion. Put on your strength, O Zion. Put on your beautiful garments, O Jerusalem, the holy city. For there shall no more come unto you the uncircumcised and the unclean. This is kind of, real quick. I know I said rapid fire, but this just popped in my mind. This kind of reminds me of what I just said about doing holy days and unholy land. Like when they would have their times of apostasy, where they go off and they do a bunch of stuff that they're not supposed to do, and they start worshiping idols, and they build in all of these altars and stuff like this to other gods. You know what happens that they do all the time before they go back? They find the book of the law, whatever, and then they go back to worshiping. You know what they do? They cleanse the land. They cleanse the land. They start tearing down the eye. Matter of fact, when the Israelites were instructed to go into Jerusalem or into the land the first time, they were commanded to destroy these things then. That's in Deuteronomy 12. Again, like this wasn't part of the lesson, but now that it's popping up in my head, it's good to point it out. When they were told to go in the land, they were told to destroy these things. And then every time they fall into apostasy and then they return back to the Father, they destroy these things. And then it's funny. They destroy these things. And usually the next thing that they do is that they keep the feast days. Because that is worship. That's worship. So the land cannot be unclean. The land cannot be dirty, right? And I hope you understand what I mean by that. So us trying to keep these feast days in this unholy land, it just doesn't even make sense biblically. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter how good or how our heart and desire is to please the Father. You gotta do what the Father says if we want to be pleasing to the Father, right? I'm not summing up the entirety of your walk in this and saying that your walk has been trash. Go, do something. I'm not diminishing the entirety of your walk, but I am saying in this regard that in this aspect, your walk is out of order if you are keeping these days. We cannot keep holy days in unholy land. So back to the point. They go into Jerusalem or they go into the land in Deuteronomy 12. They're commanded to clear the land. Now, anytime, and I'm going to get to it later. Actually, no, I'm not going to get to that, but I'm going to get to a point to where they're keeping Pesach, and we're going to see how it's relevant and how they kept Pesach. But the chapter before that, they actually cleared the land. They're coming back from apostasy. Josiah is the king at this time. Prior to keeping Pesach, they cleared the land. So this is the pattern. They fall into apostasy, they clear the land because it needs to be clean to keep these holy days. All right? So back to the text. That was a little rant. But again, it popped in my mind when I read that. It wasn't part of the lesson, but it is what it is. I hope you got something from it. Isaiah 2, verses 2 through 3, it says, "It shall come to pass in the latter days that the mountain of the house of Yahuwah shall be established as the highest of the mountains, and shall be lifted up above the hills, and all nations shall flow to it. And many peoples shall come and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of Yahuwah, to the house of the Elohim of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of Yahuwah, or Yahuwah, from Jerusalem." Again, Jerusalem is the place. Psalm 132, verses 13 through 14. "For Yahuwah has chosen Zion. He has desired it for his dwelling place. This is my resting place forever. Here I will dwell. I have desired it." All right, now it's starting to get more and more relevant to what we're talking about. Again, this is the methodical approach. Now, reverence for Jerusalem. This is why you need to reverence Jerusalem, and then we go from there. Second Chronicles 6:5-6. Since the day that I brought my people out of the land of Egypt, I chose no city out of all the tribes of Israel to which to build a house, that my name might be there. And I chose no man as prince over my people Israel, but I have chosen Jerusalem, that my name may be there, and I have chosen David to be over my people Israel. Let's get to Zechariah. Get to some prophecy, right? Because that's where we're heading to. Zechariah 14:16-19. Then everyone who survives of all the nations that have come against America, that have come against Africa, that has come against Europe, that has come against South America. No. Then everyone who survives all the nations that have come against Jerusalem shall go up year after year to worship the King, Yahuwah of hosts, and keep the feast of booths. And if any of the families on the earth do not go up to Jerusalem to worship the King, Yahuwah of hosts, there will be no rain on them. And if the family of Egypt does not go up and present themselves, that sounds familiar. 3 times a year, all your males should present themselves. If the family of Egypt does not go up and present themselves, then on them there shall be no rain. There shall be plague with which Yahuwah afflicts the nations that do not go up to keep the feast of booths. This shall be the punishment of Egypt and the punishment to all the nations that do not go up to keep the feast of booths. Where did he say they're supposed to keep this? He says that everyone who survives of all the nations that come against Jerusalem shall go up year after year to worship the King. And if any of the families on the earth do not go up to Jerusalem, put some respect on Jerusalem, man. What are we doing? What are we doing? Okay, here we go. Isaiah 33:20. Behold, Zion, the city of our appointed feast. Behold, Zion, the city of our appointed feast. Your eyes will see Jerusalem, an untroubled habitation, an immovable tent, whose stakes will never be plucked up, nor will any of its cords be broken. I'm going to put it back on the screen. Behold, Zion, the city of our appointed feast. Now, if anything that I said up until this point did not matter, did not make sense, I'm just letting the text speak for itself. The text calls Zion the city of the appointed feast. And we're going to know that this is the case because we're going to see what happens when these feasts are removed. All right? Now it's time to go into prophecy. Okay? So this is where, for a lot of you, where it may begin to make sense. And I would pray that everything up until this point made sense and that there is some sort of reflection that you've been taking in. Maybe sometimes where you may have read the text and said, are we actually supposed to be doing these things? But then, your assembly, congregation, your fellowship, they send out the invites to Pesach, and you assume that these people know more than you and that everybody can't be wrong. Like, look how many assemblies do it. Look how many of us are doing it. So this element of social proof, which I really should like pull out the true definition of that. But, you're looking at what everyone else is doing, which is validating for you why this should be done or how it's supposed to be done. So maybe you've had these moments before where you've questioned this. Are we actually supposed to be doing this? But you yielded to those who you perceive to have greater understanding. Um, Maybe this makes sense. When we look at prophecy concerning this, real quick, just from a logical standpoint, sometimes we use a lot of rhetoric as Hebrews because a lot of us are angry. We had our identity stolen. We've been in slavery. We're in this country, even among the minorities, we're the lowest of the totem pole in how they see us. Um, so a lot of us still have this uh, brokenness of spirit in us, and so that causes us to latch on to these things. Um, Proof, right? And so we identify America as Babylon, or we call it Egypt, but we call it Babylon the most. Interestingly enough, Babylon, I'm not going to go to it. You can, maybe I'll bring it up. If it's still on my mind after I'm done with this portion, I'll bring it up. But Daniel was actually in Babylon in Daniel chapter 10, and during the first month for 21 days, 3 weeks, it says, he fasted. This is around the time of Pesach. This is Daniel chapter 10. This is like verses 1 through 3 or 1 through 4. Like I say, if I remember it, I'll pull it up on the screen. But what I just said, Daniel chapter 10, verses 1 through 3 or 1 through 4 is the appropriate text. He was actually in literal Babylon and he did not keep it. So we'll classify this place as Egypt. We'll use that rhetoric. And we'll classify this place as Babylon. We'll use that rhetoric. And we'll do these things that are supposed to be holy in Egypt and Babylon. Our rhetoric doesn't even make sense when we really begin to unpack these things. It really doesn't. Um, Nevertheless, what does prophecy say? Prophecy says a lot. That's not what's supposed to be right there. That's what's supposed to be on my screen. Okay, so let me set the stage for this. Hosea chapter 2, verses 9 through 13. This is the Father proclaiming judgment. So what he's about to say is a punishment to Israel, right? So what does he say? Therefore, verse 9, therefore I will take back my grain in its time. Remember, this is a punishment. And my wine in its season. And I will take away my wool and my flax, which were to cover her nakedness. Now I will uncover her lewdness in the sight of her lovers, and no one shall rescue her out of my hand. Now, this sounds like a captivity is about to come. And I will put an end to all her myrrh, her feast. Okay, here we go. Her new moons, her Sabbaths, and all her appointed feasts. And I will lay waste her vines and her fig trees, which she said, these are my wages, which my lovers have given me. I will make them a forest, and the beasts in the field shall devour. Listen, the relevant scripture here is verse 11. And I will put an end to all her myrrh, her feasts, her new moons, her Sabbath, and all her appointed feasts. You have to ask yourself, if the Father said that he would take away your feasts, appointed feasts, right? He said feasts and appointed, and scatter us to a way to where we have established so far that we cannot properly do any of this. If he took it away as a punishment, what do he think? What do you think he thinks of you who says, I'm going to do it anyway? He removed it as a punishment, and you, in your heart of hearts, says, I'm going to worship Yah and keep his feast, even though he told you, or he remove the ability from you. That is the definition of a disobedient child. And it's a little delusional, excuse me, but it is a little delusional in the thinking. I'm not saying you're a delusional person. I'm not saying that at all. Do not misconstrue what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is a little delusional in the thinking to, if you can see this, and think that it's okay to continue on keeping feast days, knowing that the Father, as a punishment, removed them. So you deciding that you're going to do it is almost like spitting in his face and saying that, his judgments don't even matter. He did this for a reason, to punish us. If you have children and you take away their game, right? Let's say you played the game with your children and this was an enjoyable time that you all would have. And one day they're in trouble and you take away their game. And then you send them to their room. And while they're in their room, they're contemplating. It's like, you know what? I want to experience this joy that I would have with my father. And so I'm going to go grab my console, bring it into my room, and I'm going to play this game to remind me of the love of my father. Boy, if you don't sit down somewhere, you're on punishment. You're on timeout. That ain't even supposed to be played in your room. That's for the living room. Why are you doing that in there? That's for the family room. Why are you doing that in your room? I didn't tell you to do that. You know, every time we played it together in the family room. But you are on punishment. That's a disobedient child. So we have, again, I'm not excusing myself. We have been disobedient. I was disobedient. And now I can only say was because I've already taught my family this. And we're not doing it anymore. But I kept what I thought I was doing as Pesach this year. So I'm included. Like, I'm not separating me from this because I encourage people throughout time as a moray to keep these things, to do what you can. I've already repented to the Father. I've repented to the Father for what I taught in my ignorance. But now I know better. We don't have this because we're being punished as a collective. And so we should yearn for the day of our return so that we can experience what these are like. Another conversation I had with my brother Morey Yahuel was how doing these things now when we're not supposed to do them will create in your mind this place of judgment towards what it actually is like. See, what if we return to the land whenever, right? This is a hypothetical, but whenever we return, you go there with your preconceived notions on how feasts should be kept. And you go there and you see all these animals being sacrificed and all these things, and sure, they're going to be singing and all this stuff, but it ain't like what you had when y'all had the concerts at your Pesach. It ain't like what you had when y'all was wearing whatever y'all was wearing in the attire that they're wearing there looks completely different. And it can put you in the seat of judging the feast days as these ones being done as prescribed as they're inadequate. Like, it can really boost you up if we were to return to the land at any time in our lifetimes and these things were reinstituted. Like, it really puts you in the seat of judgment when you start doing things at times when you're not supposed to do them, and then when it's done in the correct way, you're like, oh, ours were better. I remember the one that we kept in such and such city. You see what I'm saying? It's kind of like having intercourse outside of marriage, and how now out of the parameters of what marriage is, and people begin to have sex. So then when they actually get their husband, or even a man with his wife, they now can judge, even if they're not saying it externally. Internally, they can judge the performance of another because now they have this point of reference that they're not even supposed to have. They're not even supposed to have that point of reference. And especially a woman who has this seal, this token, right? She has this seal, she has this token, and that is broken. Blood is released, and that is a covenant. That is a covenant. But if that is done outside of the uh, parameters of marriage, so now if she has 1, 2, 3 partners, then she has these other experiences that she's going to take to her marriage. And that can pose problems within that relationship. So there's a reason why certain things are supposed to be done at certain times in certain places within the certain construct of that relationship. And feast days are not supposed to be done in the unholy land. I hope y'all still with me. Let me get back to this text. Lamentations 2:6. He says, he laid waste his booth. Oops, it's not on the screen. Excuse me. All right, there we go. Lamentations 2:6. He laid waste his booth like a garden, laid in ruins his meeting place. Yahuwah has made Zion forget festival and Sabbath. And in his fierce indignation, he spurned king and priest. All right. So again, these are punishments. So this is why I also said that I had to look into the Shabbat, because I'm seeing these things. Now, there's a context and there's an overarching framework of the Shabbat, which puts it in a different category. But I will teach on that. That will probably be my next lesson, or maybe 2 lessons after this one, because there's a something that someone ran by me as far as like this idea of we being the temple that really needs to be addressed, and how that's going to cause you to end up in error as well. But so again, punishments levied by the Father. Lamentations 1 verses 1 through 4. It says, how lonely sits the city that was full of people. How like a widow has she become. She who was great among the nations, she who was a princess among the provinces, has become a slave. She weeps bitterly in the night, with tears on her cheeks among all her lovers. She has none to comfort her. All her friends have dealt treacherously with her. They have become her enemies. Judah, in case you was wondering what this got to do, Judah has gone into exile because of affliction and hard servitude. She dwells now among the nations, but finds no resting place. Her pursuers have all overtaken her in the midst of her distress. The roads to Zion mourn, for none come to the festival. All her gates are desolate, her priests groan, her virgins have been afflicted, and she suffers bitterly. See, again, if you need another point of reference, that Zion was the place that is supposed to have these festivals, these Moedim, these feast days. Now, the roads to Zion mourn, for none come to the festival. So, this is not saying that, you can keep them anywhere else. Because if you can keep them anywhere else, then what's the need for the roads to Zion to mourn? If you can do it anywhere. And you look at Numbers 9, and this is something that was talked about in the previous lesson, so I'm just going to touch on it here. If you want clarification on that, on Numbers 9, check out the lesson that me and Moray Noriyahu did, because we unpack it a little more there. But right here, I just want to make a point of reference. Like, if you are unclean for touching a dead body, or if you're on a long journey, then you can keep it on the second month, right? But you have to understand, If you're on a long journey, to where? Like, there's a reason that contingency is even there. You have to be on the way. Now, it also says that if you're not unclean from touching the dead body, or if you're not on a long journey, then you're like, you're in sin for not keeping it. Because that on a long journey only gave you time to get there. You still had to get there, right? It's the whole reason why the famous scripture, or the famous sequence of scriptures in Acts chapter 2, when all these different people are gathered, all these different Israelites from these different nations are gathered there, and when they heard them speaking in tongues and they understood it in their language, they were all there for Shavuot, or in the Greek word, Pentecost. That's why everyone was there. That was a long journey. If they could keep Shavuot anywhere, they don't need to come there for Jerusalem. And then they also don't get to witness this move of the Father, right? Through his son Hamashiach. They don't witness that because they're keeping it any and everywhere, right? But no, like, you're on a long journey. You got to come to this place where I put my name. That's the reason why it's there. Hosea 9, 1 through 5. Rejoice not, O Israel. Exult not like the peoples. For you have played the whore, forsaking your Elohim. You have loved the prostitute's wages on all threshing floors. Threshing floor and wine vat shall not feed them, and new wine shall fail them. They shall not remain in the land. Here we go. They shall not remain in the land of Yahuwah, but Ephraim shall return to Egypt, and they shall eat unclean food in Assyria. They shall not pour drink offerings of wine to Yahuwah, and their sacrifices shall not please him. It shall be like mourner's bread. All who eat of it shall be defiled. For their bread shall be for their hunger only. So you, real quick, before I finish this, if you think you're doing something for the Father that you're not supposed to do, it's not for the Father. If you're fasting with the wrong spirit, you must go eat something, fam. Like, go eat something. You're fasting with the wrong spirit, go eat something. If you're doing something that you are prescribing or ascribing to the Father, and it's not actually for the Father by his standards of acceptance, then it's just for you. It is just for you. So it says, their bread shall be for their hunger only. It shall not come to the house of Yahuwah. What will you do on the day of the appointed festival and on the day of the feast of Yahuwah? Let's double back. Verse 3 says, oops, sorry about that. Verse 3 says, they shall not remain in the land of Yahuwah. Verse 5, let's put it together. What will you do on the day of the appointed festival? What are we not seeing this? They shall not remain in the land of Yahuwah, right? Scatter, dispersion. What will you do on the day of the appointed festival and on the feast, on the day of the feast of Yahuwah? What you gonna do? Oh, I'm gonna keep it where I'm at. You missing the whole point. You're doing what ought not to be done. Don't matter how long you've been doing it. It don't matter how good you feel doing it. It don't matter how much you may have sacrificed of your time and money to be there, traveling cross country. Oh, trust me, I remember these days. Traveling to different states and the financial commitment that you have to have in order to accommodate these things. But the text is saying, they shall not remain in the land of Yahuwah. What will you do on the day of the appointed festival? You're not supposed to keep it. Like, this, again, is a punishment. This is a punishment. But we like to do what is right in our own eyes. Hosea 12:9. I am Yahuwah, your Elohim, who took you from the land of Egypt. I will again make you dwell in tents, as in the days of the appointed feast. So now we went from punishments to now speaking at a different time. So this will be a future time after some restoration. And the next scriptures we're about to go into talks about the a restoration. It's still in prophecy though. But again, it says, I am Yahuwah your Elohim from the land of Egypt, or who brought you from the land of Egypt. I will make you dwell in tents again as in the days of the appointed feast. It didn't say as you are currently doing or as you do in your appointed feast. It says as in the days of the appointed feast. Saying and proving that they are no longer doing this at this point of time because they would have been dispersed. They would have been scattered because they are out the land. Now, let's look at the restoration. See, this is what we should look forward to. Zephaniah 3 verses 14 through 18. It says, sing aloud, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O Israel. Rejoice and exult with all your heart, O daughter of Jerusalem. Yahuwah has taken away the judgments against you. Okay, this is restoration he's talking about. He has cleared away your enemies. The king of Israel, Yahuwah, is in your midst. You should never again fear evil. On that day it shall be said to Jerusalem, fear not, O Zion. Let not your hands grow weak. Yahuwah, your Elohim, is in your midst, a mighty one who will save. He will rejoice over you with gladness. He will quiet you by his love. He will exalt over you with loud singing. I will gather those of you who mourn for the festival, so that you no longer suffer reproach. It is Israel's reproach to not be able to keep the feast. It is Israel's reproach to not be able to do this. So in our restoration, that is to be restored. He said, verse 18 again, I will gather those of you who mourn for the festival, so that you will no longer suffer reproach. How are you mourning for the festival if you're doing it every year? In a different land, a strange land, in the land of your captivity. How? How can you mourn for it if you're doing it? How can you long for it if you never miss it? If it's always accessible? How can it mean anything when you are restored in the context of the festivals, the feast days, the Moedim? How can it matter if you have been doing it year after year after year after year? When it's restored, it means nothing to you. We are not in alignment with the Creator in his instructions and his ways, and prophecy is telling us that. He took it away as a punishment. He will give it back when he restores us. We are in a level of reproach right now because we cannot keep those feast days. And that is a cultural identifier. That is a way of worship of the Father. That is an enjoyable experience that they would love to have. But you're preparing for Sukkot right now. Hey. 2 Chronicles 2, 1 through 4. Now Solomon purposed to build a temple in the name of Yahuwah and a royal palace for himself. Now Solomon assigned 70,000 men to bear burdens and 80,000 to quarry in the hill country, and 3,600 to oversee them. And Solomon sent word to Hiram, the king of Tyre, as you dealt with David my father and sent him cedar to build himself a house to dwell in, so deal with me. Behold, I am about to build a house in the name of Yahuwah my Elohim and dedicate it to him for the burning of incense, sweet spices before him, and for the regular arrangement of showbread, for the burnt offerings morning and evening, on the Sabbaths, on the new moons, and the appointed feasts of Yahuwah our Elohim, as ordained forever for Israel. This is what the temple is for. It actually saddens me to see how much is here in the text about this. And unless the text explicitly says, do not keep my feast anywhere except Jerusalem, then it's like, hey, well, all this other stuff don't matter. It saddens me how we have been ignoring what is written for our own pleasures, our vanity. It really does. And it saddens me, and it doesn't put me on the high horse. It saddens me because I did it too. This is what the temple is for. The burning of incense, of sweet spices before him, and a regular arrangement to show bread, and for the burnt offerings, morning and evenings, on the Sabbaths, on the new moons, and the appointed feast of Yahuwah, our Elohim, as ordained forever for Israel. What are we doing, Israel? You know, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that Pesach is not just a meal. It's not just a slaughtering of an animal so that you can eat. That is actually a sacrifice. It's easy to forget this because from the initiation or the inauguration of Pesach, we see that it was done in Egypt. And so, given that, how it was performed or who had to perform what was different. What did we not have in Egypt? We did not have priesthood. We didn't have a temple, tabernacle. We were not in the land. Heck, honestly, we weren't even the covenant people yet. We weren't even Yah's people yet. That happens a few chapters later. So it is easy to misconstrue who is responsible for the Pesach lamb. Now, we got to understand that again, it is a sacrifice. Our first scripture just gives you a point of reference. This right here, things are going to change. Exodus 40, verse 17, in the first month, in the second year, on the first day of the month, the tabernacle was erected. Now, keep this in mind just for a point of reference. Numbers 9 was in the first month of the second year. Here we are in Exodus 40. You see how much information is in between these two books, right? There's a lot going on. It's a lot going on. Things are being established. An order is occurring. We, at this point in time, we're now a piece. We are people. But in the first month, in the second year, on the first day of the month, right? The first day of Abib in the second year, the tabernacle was erected. Now, again, Pesach is a sacrifice. Deuteronomy 16 lays that out. Let me fix my screen here. This thing is all off. Okay, I hope the rest of them, because I'm looking at my monitor and it's different than the actual software that's using to project this picture. So hopefully the other scriptures was clear, but I'll read them out, so you should be good. Deuteronomy 16, 1 through 6. Observe the month of Abib and keep the Passover to Yahuwah. Remember, these are not Passovers to us. These are not Passovers for us. This is the Passover to Yahuwah, your Elohim. For in the month of Abib, Yahuwah, your Elohim, brought you out of Egypt by night. All right? And you shall offer the Passover sacrifice to Yahuwah your Elohim from the flock or the herd at the place that Yahuwah will choose to make his name dwell there. Let me tell you how much of of error that I was in. Again, I don't mind putting myself out there. Because when I put myself out there, you understand that this ain't about judgment. This is about correction. I had to correct myself. And then I had to tell that to my family. So this ain't about judgment. This is about correction. But with my understanding now, as I was, and the people who I was with at this time, we're thinking that we're doing the right things, right? That we're trying to get closer and closer to how the text um, describes things. And so one of the things that we did was we took a whole lamb. We took a whole lamb. And that whole lamb was slaughtered and cooked as we understood it to be according to the text. And we thought that this was pleasing because this is what the text says. Oh, how wrong were we? I have shame of thinking how we were thinking that this was such a good thing. You remember your times in Christianity when you have these feelings and, stuff like that? You get a good word and a good sermon and you walk out feeling full, probably off some nonsense. And how we look back at that, it's like, dang, man, we was crazy. We was out there, fam. That's how I feel about this. Like, we slaughtering the lamb and ain't none of us a priest. Not a priest of Yah. None of us was a priest of Yah. I'll tell you that much. And like we want to spiritualize it. We're kingdom of priests. Are we that right now? Are we that right now? In the land of our captivity. Are we a kingdom of priests now? So that was error that I was partaking in, thinking that I'm doing the right thing. Thinking that that's better than going to the grocery store. I mean, it was my lamb. I didn't slaughter it, but I provided the lamb. Because I had livestock at that time. I had sheep at that time. I provided the livestock for the Pesach meal. Only thing that we can do now is just repent and do better. Be more diligent about the text and the context in which things are said and how to appropriately apply these things. Or our zeal can get us in more trouble. So, back to the text. All right, I spoke enough. Verse 2. And you shall offer the Pesach sacrifice to Yahuwah your Elohim from the flock or the herd at the place that Yahuwah will choose to make his name dwell there. You shall not eat leaven with it. 7 days you shall eat it with unleavened bread, the bread of affliction, for you came out of the lands of Egypt in haste, that all the days of your life you may remember the day when you came out of the land of Egypt. No leaven shall be eaten with you in all your territory for 7 days, nor shall any of the flesh that you sacrifice. All right, let's put this in perspective. That you sacrifice on the evening of the first day remain all night until morning. You may not offer the Passover sacrifice within any of your towns that Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you. But at the place that Yahuwah your Elohim will choose to make his name dwell in it, there you shall offer the Passover sacrifice. Like you could be in the land of Israel. You could be in the land of Israel. And there was still a certain place that you had to offer your Passover sacrifice. You could bring the lamb and give it to the priest. right? Since you're already there, you probably got some tents or you got you some places that you stand. You go here, you can, but you give it to the priest. It says, verse 5, you may not offer the Passover sacrifice within any of your towns that Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you. This is speaking of in the land. So you had to still go to Jerusalem for this, and you give your lamb to the priest. And the priest would do what they have to do for the sacrifice of it. It is a sacrifice. We do not perform sacrifices. So, was that butcher at whatever meat shop provided the grocery store the lamb? Was that a priest of Yahuwah? Was that a son of Aharon, of Aaron? Yeah, I'm being facetious. Only because I've experienced it. Only because I might as well laugh or I sit here crying on the camera because I was being foolish thinking I was being righteous. Might as well laugh. Crack a little joke about it. I've already dealt with the seriousness of it. I've already had to repent. I've already done that. I might as well laugh at how foolish we were. So don't take personal my laughter. I dealt with myself already. I've come to terms with this. I've come to terms with this already. So I'm at a different place mentally. But I felt terrible coming to this understanding. But I was happy to come to this understanding so that I could get back into proper alignment with the Father, the way that I've always wanted to be. And if that means I have to not celebrate these days, then that's what it is. That's proper alignment. All right, let's see the priest in action. Okay? Priest in action. We go into 2 Chronicles chapter 35. Remember a little while ago I said that they cleared the land and then they kept Passover. So that was 2 Chronicles chapter 34. You can read it for context. But chapter 35 is where we are. I'm not going to read all of this, but I'm going to read some things that I think is pertinent. Right? So Josiah kept a Passover to Yahuwah in Jerusalem. That's pertinent. This is them coming out of apostasy. And they slaughtered the lamb on the 15th day of the first month. He appointed the priests to their offices and encouraged them in the service of the house of Yahuwah. And he said to the Levites who taught all Israel, who were holy to Yahuwah, put the holy ark in the house that Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, built. You need not to carry it on your shoulders. Now serve Yahuwah your Elohim and his people Israel. Okay. Then it goes down. Let's see, verse 4. Let me keep reading. Prepare yourselves according to your father's houses by your divisions, as prescribed in the writing of David, king of Israel, and the document of Solomon his son. And then verse 6 is them down. Again, I'm saying I'm not going to read all of it. And slaughter. This is them talking to themselves. This is them talking to the priest. And slaughter the Passover lamb. And consecrate yourselves. And prepare for your brothers according to the word of Moses. That means according to the law. So this is pre-exile. Let me look at you. This is pre-exile. So if you want to see Pesach in action, this is it. So you get them who were in apostasy. They return to the Father. Josiah then commissions them to get ready. And he gives them the instructions of what they need to do. Verse 6, and slaughter, to the priest, slaughter the Passover lamb and consecrate yourselves and prepare for your brothers to do according to the word of the law by Moses. Okay? And then this is how they got their lambs. It says, then Josiah contributed to the lay people as Passover offerings for all who were present, lambs and young goats. Because remember, you can also do a goat. From the flock to the number of 30,000. And then remember, there's also sacrifices that have to happen. So it says to the number of 30,000 and 3,000 bulls. These were from the king's possessions. Okay? And his officials contributed willingly to the people, the priests and to the Levites. Okay? And then we jump down to verse 10. When the service has been prepared for the priests stood in their place, and the Levites in their divisions according to the king's command, and they slaughtered the Passover lamb. It didn't say the layperson. We know that because verse 7 says Josiah contributed to the lay people. He gave them the lambs that they would need. Verse 10, and when the service has been prepared, for the priests stood in their place, and the Levites, come on, I get out of my way, stood in their place, and the Levites in their divisions according to the king's command, they slaughtered the Passover lamb, and the priest threw the blood that they received from them, while the Levites flayed the sacrifices. Come on now. I'm not making this stuff up. This stuff has been here the whole time. And we were ignorant. We were ignorant. But this has been here the whole time. And that's the sad part about it. How many people are in error? It's been here the whole time. I'll pull it back up. And who slaughtered the Passover lamb? And they slaughtered the Passover lamb, and the priest threw the blood that they received from them. Who is them? The Levites. While the Levites flayed the sacrifices. And they set aside the burnt offerings that they might distribute them according to the groupings of their fathers' houses of the lay people to offer to Yahuwah, as it is written in the book of Moses. And so they did with the bulls. And then it goes on to talk about how they did everything according to the text. And afterward, verse 14, and afterward they prepared for themselves and for the priests, because the priests, the sons of Aaron, were offering the burnt offerings and the fat parts until night. So the Levites prepared for themselves and the priests, the sons of Aaron. Come on now. What are we doing? All right, verse 18. I've been highlighting stuff and it ain't been showing up on the screen. My bad. Well, 2 Chronicles 35. 2 Chronicles 35. My apologies. I thought it was showing up on the screen. But regardless, it's there. You have Bibles. You can read it. Verse 18. No Passover like it. Excuse me. No Passover like it had been kept in Israel since the days of Samuel the prophet. None of the kings of Israel had kept such a Passover as was kept by Josiah, and the priests and the Levites and all of Judah and Israel who were present, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. In the 18th year of the reign of Josiah, this Passover was kept. Now, if that is not enough, let me hit you with this. This is Ezra chapter 6, verses 13 through 22. We see it again. So now they have, let's set the stage, give you the backdrop. Now they were commissioned to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. So that's what they did. That's what Ezra and Nehemiah is talking about. We have that pictured here. So we get to here in Ezra. They have now rebuilt the temple. And so some things are about to happen. What's about to happen? This is important, right? So I said Ezra 6, verses 13 through 22. Really, the pertinent part is verse 16. and 16 on down. And it says, let me scroll down a little more so make sure everything is in the screen. And the people of Israel, the priests and the Levites, and the rest of the returned exiles. Come on now. And the rest of the returned exiles celebrated the dedication. Dedication of what? The dedication of the rebuilt temple. All right. So this returned exiles is about to be very important. Celebrate the dedication of this house of Elohim with joy. All right. So then we drop down. Oh, no. You know what? I'm going to read all of this. And they offered the dedication of this house of Elohim 100 bulls, 200 rams, 400 lambs as a sin offering for all Israel, 12 male goats according to the number of the tribes of Israel. And they set the priests in their divisions and the Levites in their divisions for the service of Elohim at Jerusalem as written in the book of Moses. What they're doing is according to the text. It is according to what was written and established in Torah. All right. Verse 19. On the 14th day of the first month, the returned exiles kept the Passover. The returned exiles kept the Passover. For the priests and the Levites had purified themselves together, all of them were clean. There you go. Again, we see the role of the priests. For the priests and Levites had purified themselves together, all of them were clean. They slaughtered the Passover lamb for all the returned exiles, for their fellow priests and for themselves. And it was eaten by the people of Israel who had returned from exile, and also by everyone who had joined themselves and separated himself from the uncleanness of the peoples of the land to worship Yahuwah, the Elohim of Israel. We are in the land full of uncleanness. Like, that's where we are. But Jerusalem is holy, right? So we're in this land trying to keep holy days. I'm going to reiterate it one more time. Trying to keep holy days in an unholy land. All right. Verse 22. And they kept the feast of unleavened bread 7 days with joy, for Yahuwah made them joyful and turned the heart of the king of Assyria to them, so that he aided them in the work of the house of Elohim, the Elohim of Israel. And the last scripture that I'm going to bring up, Deuteronomy chapter 31, 9 through 13. And then Moses wrote this law and gave it to the priests, the sons of Levi, who carried the ark of the covenant of Yahuwah, and to all the elders of Israel. And Moses commanded them, at the end of 7 years, at the set time in the year of release, at the Feast of Booths, when all Israel comes to appear before Yahuwah your Elohim at a place that he would choose. It is the redundancy of this is beyond repetition. It's like they always remind you. The text always reminds you where this is to be done. At the end of 7 years, at a set time in the year of release, at the Feast of Booths, when all Israel comes to appear before Yahuwah, your Elohim, at the place that he will choose. It's very specific. You shall read this law before all Israel in their hearing. Assemble the people, men, women, and little ones, and the sojourner within your towns, that they may hear and learn to fear Yahuwah your Elohim, and be careful to do all the words of this law, and that their children who have not known it may hear and learn to fear Yahuwah your Elohim as long as you live in the land that you are going over the Jordan to possess. Family. I don't know what else to say. So since I don't know what else to say, I'll go ahead and end this. Actually, before I end it, there's one more thing I want to discuss. Now, I'm not going to put these scriptures on the screen, but I'll tell you where to go. Um, don't copy Jeroboam. Uh, Jeroboam decided to do his own thing and create a new feast, right? Um, and this is out of fear, some, not necessarily zeal, but he did his own thing. This is 1 Kings chapter 12, verses 25 through 33. I'm only going to read verses 32 and 33, but please go to it, read the context for yourselves. It says, and Jeroboam appointed a feast on the 15th day of the 8th month, like the feast that was in Judah, and he offered sacrifices on the altar. So he did in Bethel, sacrificing to the calves. We love these calves, huh? Sacrificing to the calves that he made. And he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places that he made. He went up to the altar that he made in Bethel on the 15th day in the 8th month, in the month that he had devised from his own heart. Devised from his own heart. And he instituted a feast for the people of Israel and went up to make offerings. So he wanted to keep the people from going to Jerusalem. He wanted to keep them from going to Jerusalem. Here's something else to consider. This one I think I will put on the screen. It's such a familiar story. Come on now. It is such a familiar story, but I don't know how many of us actually considered what's happening there. So I'll point it out, and if you're already familiar, well, hallelujah. But if not, this ought to give you some perspective, right? This is the infamous story of the golden calf. So what happened in this story? What can we take from this? See, it says, when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron and said, make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. So Aaron said to them, take off the rings of gold that are in the ears of your wives and sons and your daughters and bring them to me. So all the people took off the rings of gold that were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. And he received the gold from their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool and made a golden calf. And they said, these are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. All right, this is the people. This is the people proclaiming what this is. Okay? It says they said, this is the people. And then Aaron, when Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made a proclamation and said, tomorrow, I want to highlight this on his own, shall be a feast to Yahuwah. They know that they just created these calves. They didn't fall out the sky. They didn't magically appear. They know where these came from. But yet they're ascribing the works of Yah to it. And Aaron is proclaiming that they're going to feast to Yahuwah. Here marks another feast of the people of Israel who are doing something that they're not supposed to do and slapping Yah's name on it. There's nothing new under the sun. There is nothing new under the sun. Tomorrow shall be a feast to Yahuwah. And they rose up early the next day and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. And the people sat down and eat and drink and rose up to play. Ain't that what we do at these feast days? We sit down and eat and drink and play. And play. We play too much. We play too much. And this ain't as serious as it should be. And everything is a game. This is serious. And we have been discrediting the words of the Father. We have been diminishing and minimizing his instructions and slapping his name. It's a feast to Yahuwah. We keeping Pesach. Well, we all know how the Father responded to this. He wasn't too pleased with this. We know that. In conclusion, I want to say this, that you got to be careful about using social proof as your barometer of what's right and what's wrong. We were Christians, and we went right along with the masses, thinking that it was right because everyone else is doing it. This has spread all across the world. There's no way that everyone is wrong. If you know my story, I did not become a Christian until I was like 25 or 26 years old. And I was only a Christian for about 4 to 5 years, give or take, right? And coming in new, without all of the indoctrination from childhood up to an adult, I did not have a lot of resistance to what I was seeing in the text. I didn't have to battle through doctrine and dogma. I would read the text and I would say, this don't sound right. This don't sound like the law is done away with when I would read the text. But when I would go to Google and I would pose this question, I would typically just get back the same rhetoric, right? This is Christianity, and it is the dominant religion across the world. I mean, whether we like it or not, it is a dominant religion. And so when you Google things about the Bible, you're going to get Christian answers. So all I got was this feedback loop telling me that the law's done away, the law's done away. It was all saying the same thing. I never saw an opposing view, all right? I never saw an opposing view. And then it wasn't until I did, 5 years later, I finally saw an opposing view that these laws are to be kept. And when I saw that, I'm like, that makes sense. So as a Christian, prior to this moment, I was putting all of this stuff in the back of my mind. When I had the opportunity to teach Sunday school, I would never teach that it was done away with. Now, granted, for context, I only was thinking about the 10 Commandments, right? I didn't know about all these other laws, but even then, I didn't think that they were done away with. So I would never say anything like that. In fact, a couple of times I've actually said that I said something to the opposite. No one ever said anything to me. Maybe they was just like, oh, whatever. I'm a new Sunday school teacher. Nobody's paying attention to me. And maybe that was true. But now, fast forward, I come into this information, this new perspective, and I'm like, that makes sense. That's what I was thinking. And so I wonder how many of us feel like that when it comes to this, where you're like, you see these things about in the land, but you see everybody doing it, so you're going to put it in the back of your mind and just proceed until you get some information that makes more sense. And prayerfully, that's today. Don't be Jeroboam. Don't be our rebellious ancestors who created a calf, ascribed the works of Yah to it, and then said that it's a feast to Yahuwah. We can't do that. So, sometimes on our quest to be righteous, we could end up on this path to where the very thing that we fear, we actually manifest. So, we want to not do wrong so bad that we actually manifest it because it's placed out of fear. And so we could do that with our zeal and excitement as well. But before I get to the zeal and excitement part, I want you to realize that this is the same thing that happened after Babylon. Like, they did not want to end up in captivity again. So you know what they did? They start creating fences. And these fences are these boundaries or these separations that keep you from getting close to sin. This is where you get the whole idea of the Sabbath day's journey. That's not prescribed for us, but the Sabbath day's journey was a way that they instituted to try to keep the people from working, right? So we've already seen it happen. Like, we have points of reference in the text, and we do it now. And our zeal can also cause us to go down the same path. And our excitement and our zeal has done just that. We have created our own version of replacement theology. Yes, I've made this reference before. I'm going to elaborate it a little bit more. So, uh, our version of replacement theology is not like the ones with the Gentiles, where they have said that the church has replaced Israel. No, ours is a one-for-one swap of holidays for holy days. In fact, I'm pretty sure that most of the people who will see this probably have waved that banner at some point in time on Facebook, where they say, I don't celebrate holidays, I celebrate holy days. Or I don't celebrate, or I don't keep holidays, I keep feast days. See, this is a one-for-one swap because we feel we got to have something to celebrate. We lose Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter. We lose these family get-togethers, these things that we have these emotional attachments to, these memories that we love and enjoy. We lose that because now we are walking off the beaten path, right? So now we are walking the narrow road. So we have no dealings with those type of things. So now we have tied our identity into these feast days, so that by keeping them, we believe that we are more of an Israelite. Well, we know that this is the case because when someone like myself or anyone else who presents this type of information, if you come with the feeling of, well, if we can't keep the feast days, what do we have? That is a statement of passion. That is a statement of emotion. And I get it. I understand it. But just because you have this feeling, this emotion, doesn't mean that it's right. When I left Christianity and I stopped tithing, that felt wrong for a while. It felt like sin. Why did it feel like sin? Well, that is because I was conditioned through the rhetoric of the church to tie my faithfulness and my obedience to tithing, right? And of course, we know that that system of tithing and that way of tithing that they are presenting is unbiblical, but I was conditioned through that. So when I left and I stopped, I felt bad. I felt like it was sin. Of course, we know those feelings was wrong, and eventually they went away. That's the case here. You feel like you're supposed to do this, and you've probably been doing this for a few years now, but we're not supposed to. Your feelings don't make you right. So if you feel bad about something, don't mean that it's necessarily wrong, and because you feel good about something doesn't necessarily mean that it's right. We got to remove these feelings. So what I'm going to say next is probably going to make a few of you upset, but the reality is, it's true. Don't don't criticize those Christians for not keeping the feast days. If you want to criticize them for their celebration of Christmas and Thanksgiving and Easter, if you want to criticize them for that, more power to you. I ain't mad at you. But don't criticize them for not keeping the feast days, because guess what? You ain't keeping them either. And what you're doing is not to Yahuwah, but it is to yourself and those who you are with. So keep this balanced perspective. You can stop that particular criticism because you ain't kept nothing. And in fact, you have been out of order and out of alignment. So in order to resolve this feeling of what do we have after understanding that you can't keep the feast, this is what I would say to you. Get more in touch with your Israelite heritage. See, the problem is that we tie a lot of our, almost all of our heritage into these external things or these public things. these public displays, right? So we tie them mostly in fringes and feast days. Well, here's the thing. Fringes, yes, you can wear those and you can do that anywhere. Again, more power to you. You can do that. But feast days, you cannot. So now that you don't have that, you have to look at what else you can do. So what else is part of our Israelite heritage? Yo, if you still have children, you having a son, do an 8th-day circumcision. Do an 8th-day circumcision. Like, I, even if you have him in the hospital, you can tell him not to circumcise your son, and you can still get a 8th-day circumcision performed. That is part of your Israelite heritage. Why are we not doing that? So get in touch with that. Do that. Do naming ceremonies for your sons and daughters. Do these ceremonies, right? What else we got? You can pull up. As a matter of fact, if we go to Jeremiah 29, actually, no, I'm not going to pull it up. I'm going to tell you to read it. This is in captivity. Jeremiah 29 tells you, build houses, plant vineyards, eat of the fruit, marry your sons and daughters, increase, do not decrease. Like, so get you some land, grow you some food. Matter of fact, even if you're renting, you could put hopefully you could put a raised bed in your backyard, grow you some food so you could fully understand the concept of sowing and reaping. Remember, it's physical first. So there's so much that me planting, growing my own food that I've been able to gain in understanding because I'm working the land. So grow your food, get you some livestock so you can understand what it means to see the difference between a sheep and goat, or the significance of separating sheep and goats, and not have to go to Google and get some Eurocentric answer from someone who researched something and you're just going off of what they're saying. Like, you speak with a level of conviction when you have done these things yourself. When you have done these things, and imagine having to use someone else's research about things that you can do on your own. We shouldn't do that. We shouldn't be there at that place. These are the components that we got to break away from. You can wear cultural attire at other things that's not events, right? You can have your tunics for Shabbat, and you can have some sort of cultural attire that you wear on a day-to-day basis. You may not be able to wear it to work. Maybe you can't. I don't know your job. But you could do these things outside of feast days. Why are we not doing that? See, there's more. See, I have structured my life, and this is not a flex, but it is honest. And I've been honest with you this whole time. I've put myself on blast. I've made my mistakes, and so I'm going to be honest with this. Uh, I have structured my life, and I live my life in such a way that if you spend a day at my house with me and my family, that you're going to know something is different about me. You're going to know something is different about me and what it is that we do or what it is that we live by. So I was going to start naming stuff, but I know how things could be misinterpreted and it might seem like something that I'm not trying to make it. So I'm not even going to say it. Nevertheless, just know that there are things that you can do in your day-to-day life, your day-to-day walk, that represents who you are. There are celebrations and customs that you can bring into your life that are not feast days that you can do. We don't have to. We don't have to lie to ourselves and do things out of order because we want to celebrate. We don't have to do that. We need to let Yah's word be true and every man a liar. And you need to search the scriptures and see if these things be true. I mean, I put them on the screen. A couple of them may have been cut off, but I put them on the screen. I didn't make this stuff up. So, have I become your enemy because I have told you the truth?